Good afternoon. I want to thank everybody who joins us. My name is Olena and I'm happy to see you here in the Ukraine Media Center Ukraine Forum. Today is 7th of March, Monday. It's been 9 years of the war, and today is day 397 of the full-scale invasion of our homeland by Russian aggressor. And I traditionally want to thank the representatives of all the mass media who tell the world the truth about our heroic resistance. We invited you today to introduce the people who are fond of very interesting work. They founded the Museum of Objects of War, and we will be talking why is it necessary to document the tragic events of the war and why is it important to do it now. So I want to introduce the team who visited us today. It's Andrii, Sirchenko, the co-founder of War Fragments Museum, Tetiana Fiks, the co-founder of the War Fragments Museum, and also Myroslava Linska, the author of one of the artifacts. Joining us will be Olena Rozvadovska, chairman of the board and co-founder of the Charitable Foundation, the Voices of Children. So I want to start our conversation with why is it important to do it now and how it helps all of us Ukrainians to document these tragic and horrible events and to tell the world about them. Good afternoon, everybody. In view of the words that were already said, I would like to get back 1 year in history, and that was the period when we as a team who was working in IT sector, and we still work in that sector, we decided to create these projects, results of which you may see in front of you now. We've realized, just like every person is looking for their place during the war, it's the most difficult period, because when you don't have a goal, when you don't have a purpose, you don't know how you can help, you clearly understand where is evil and where is good. And there are no more questions regarding whether it is important to help, whether it is important to support your side. So we decided to gather the stories, to collect the stories from all around Ukraine. That was before the massive deoccupations of the Ukrainian territories. So within 9 months we collected about 300 stories of real people, incredible stories with from absolutely all the regions of Ukraine. And we may mention Mariupol, AzovStal, Kharkiv, Kiev region, Dnipro. In fact, it's all the Ukraine. And in fact, our task was to document and to find stories that we would hardly ever hear, hardly ever find out about. So this is how we wanted to show the world by this project what is really going on in Ukraine. Why is it a tragedy? Why is it a genocide? So that was our mission, that we exercised as such artifacts. And you may follow the link at every artifact to our website, and you can see the story behind it. Well, and it's all charity. Every artifact can be bought through our website. In a week there will be an auction, and part of the artifacts will be handed over to the museum exhibits, and the first exhibition will be in National Art Museum of Ukraine in the middle of April. Well, Ms. Tetiana, we understand that there is someone's story, someone's personal story behind each artifact. For what I understand, a story of a person who survived the occupation. So tell us about these artifacts. Whose stories are behind these ones? So tell us, how can people get involved in the project, how to become a part, and how to take part in the auction itself. Good afternoon. Obviously we brought only a minor fraction of all of our treasures here, because in every cube you can see a part of human life. So this cube is from Saltivka. We were going out on a mission there. This artifact is from a building that shielded, that was the last building at the block. It is the last one near the field, and then behind that field Russian Federation starts. So we met a woman. She was living with her husband in Saltivka. They had an apartment. Obviously they don't have that apartment anymore. There is no building, it does not exist anymore. So she keeps coming to that place to feed the dogs that live there nearby. Her husband died, but she keeps coming there to feed the dogs, and this is the only thing that was left from their apartment. Here you can see the flower. It's a difficult story for one of our colleagues, Nastya, who handles the stories of artifacts, and this is one of the most tragic stories. This flower, it was handed to us by the volunteers. The story behind this flask of flour is about the kids. The kids were left at home in Zaporizhia region, and their mother, she left for some affairs to Zaporizhia region, and the occupation came there within an hour, and the children were left alone. They were ashamed to ask for food from the neighbors, so they were eating this flour and drinking water, and this is only thanks to what they survived. Here you can see a chain link from the dog's collar. Everybody seems to know about Nastya Tikha, who had a dog shelter in Irpin. She had one dog there with whom she worked a lot. That was an autistic dog who fled, who was afraid, and that was the only dog which was lost, but Nastya still hopes to find him. Here you can see a shell from Bucha. It was incoming into one of the apartments. The whole apartment burnt out, and the only thing left there was an icon. We have another artifact, but I want to introduce to you one of our protagonists from a project. Is Myroslava Linska. She's the owner of the lavender field in Dimir. If you never visited it, you should. Myroslava's artifact is in the phase of preparation. You can understand how those cubes are being prepared in order to become it like this. It would take a month at least. Myroslava, please tell us about your artifact. Good afternoon, my name is Myroslava. I'm an owner of the strawberry and lavender farm in Dimir. It's to the north of Kiev. Every time it's very difficult to tell this story. Our territory is about 1 hectare of land, and in all the fields where the coffee shop is, we live there nearby. So the Russian military were based there. We were 2 weeks under occupation, and when they installed the checkpost there and when they started acting aggressively, we had to leave. However, we came back within 1 week after occupation because we just couldn't leave it all like that. It's a lavender field. We invested everything in that land, and we couldn't take anything with us because it's a land, it's a berry field, lavender. And as we came back, the Russian military, they were just driving across those fields. How should I put it? They were just driving across the fields, destroying the fences. They were going straight ways. They destroyed all the fences. They stole all the inventory, everything from the storage, everything that was in the coffee shop. When we came back, there was nothing to work on the fields with. no garden scissors, no batteries, nothing. They took away everything. And thanks to the support, we started to renew our field. Thanks to the volunteers from Ukraine, from abroad, I want to thank all of them. And back in August, we were able to have the Lavender Festival, where we raised funds for the Battalion 49, Karpatska Sich. My father is currently in the ranks of that battalion, so we raised funds to buy them a truck. So I wanted to raise those funds, and I wanted to gather as much people as possible, because those people who survived the occupation, they felt it quite difficult. Not all of them want to tell their stories, they don't share the phone numbers, they feel it very difficult to communicate and to talk about that. I wanted them for just 1 minute to not like relax, but I don't even know how to put it, just to provide them with some relief, some piece of happiness, because they spent all the time in the occupied Dimir, where the pump stations are bombed, the houses are destroyed and burned. So thanks to the support, we continue working, we carry on, and we help our military. Thank you, Myroslava, thank you for this story, thank you for this artifact. Tetiana, Andrii, I know that you forward the funds to support not only the military units but also to support the children. Please tell us a little bit more about that. Well, we have another artifact which illustrates where we actually forward our funds to, and I wanted to show it. This is one artifact from, in fact, from AzovStal, from one of the warriors who gave a handicap to the armed forces of Ukraine and to many defenders of Ukraine. So this is the box, the type of box which is being sent all across the world, so people receive those artifacts. This is the key which belonged to Ilya Samolenko. I think everybody has seen his streams where Russians were dropping aviation bombs on top of AzovStal, and he was having video conferences from there, from AzovStal. So this is the key that he hid. He was thinking if he would get imprisoned, he would have this handcuff key, so he can help either himself or one of his brothers in arms to flee. And so he was imprisoned, and Russians, after the exchange, they returned his prosthetic, and Russians were unable to find that key, so he handed it over to us. So it's one of the funds, the AzovStal Families Association. We have also SupportAzov among those who provided us with at least 30 different stories and incredible artifacts. And also here with us is the representative of the Voices of Children organization, and I think that those are the three foundations that we cooperate with. And probably I will pass the microphone to Miss Olena. Please get involved in our conversation. You are one of the funds that support our guys. How sensible is that support? How important is it now? Well, these exhibits, they impress a lot. You have different stories of the children. Please let us know of some of them. Thank you, Andrii. Thank you, Tetiana, for this idea, for its implementation, for this project. It's like full of sensations. It was difficult to imagine it. I mean, this cube before that, and now it's an opportunity to physically touch the story of a person that you never meet, but those stories, they already live in those cubes. Thank you, Myroslava, for your story. It's so important to feel, to know, to find out about those stories. We are the charitable foundation that helps the children starting from 2015. The subject of maternity is the subject of our work within all these years. Sometimes sometimes it sounds incredible, childhood and war, but what happens in reality, we see that children, they preserve resilience in the conditions where the adults want to give up, they want to dive into depression, something you were planning for ages. The children, they have inspiration to continue playing, to keep on smiling, and to help us to continue doing that. And what we've seen in our practice, every child who survived some important event in their life, whether traumatic or not traumatic, or something happy or absolutely unhappy, but some event that changed their lives. So there is always the desire in them to be seen with their story, with something they survived, and to do it in an ethical way, ecologic way, in a way that would remain in history. It's very important because now we all are writing the history of Ukraine, people who survived some events related to the Russian invasion of Ukraine, and this history is being written at very high price. So we're always happy to be partners in any project which would be related to writing down of the stories of Ukrainians, which would remain with us for years. And at the same time, we're happy that we can get some support, including financial support for implementation of our programs. Our programs, first of all, are about psychological and psychosocial support of the children and families. We organize psychological support programs for families, and we provide humanitarian support. There is a team of psychologists working in Dimmer. There are stories of people who were significant inhabitants, significant citizens of their community, and now they end up without anything, with just one bag on their shoulders. So we provide support to such families, and it's an honor for us to tell the stories of such Ukrainians. I cannot help but asking about the communication with the world community, with the global community. We understand it's important for the project, for you. So how do you communicate the stories of the regular Ukrainians through this culturally significant project? To what extent is it real? To what extent is it possible? And do you feel any feedback from them? When we were conceiving this project, we wanted those cubes to be bought specifically by the Europeans and the United States, the Westerners, because Ukrainians, they keep on donating one way or another. So we just launched our website, and we got already 2 cubes bought from us by the foreigners. They have some connection to Ukraine, but nevertheless they're still foreigners, and we had a couple of interviews with Andrii with American media in their shows, and I think it's very important that we were not mistaken in this regard, that we wanted to communicate our stories to the world not through media, so they're not only statistics, but when you can try every story on yourself. Because, for example, if you're a woman, you can imagine how is it to bear under the bombs, under the shells. And because these are the exhibits like this with the human stories behind that, people are being touched by it, because the topic of war is the topic of war. Everybody understands it's a war, but when it's related to some civilians, for example, the story of the kids who were eating flour, you cannot help but showing your emotions. So we will continue communicating those stories to the world. Well, how do you look for those stories? We understand your team is traveling across the deoccupied territories. That's a very complicated work, the work of communication with those who survived those difficult moments in their lives. How is it happening in reality? well, all the stories and those objects in the cubes, the artifacts that we collected during our expeditions, it's a very difficult experience, but for our team it's a very valuable experience, because even for us it gave understanding of the project, of what's going on. Usually we just plan the trip to some region, and then we read the stories about the stories that could be told, and when you get there you start talking to the people, and those stories, they go aside because you understand that there are more other stories. So we keep collecting those stories that no one ever heard about, because we go to some most remote villages where journalists don't reach. And it's a very important kind of travels, because we always talk inside our team that we were never hugging some strangers, so much strangers, but in fact they become non-strangers anymore. So this is the kind of support that we extend to them and they extend to us. So when we were meeting Olena, she said that we should undergo some course of emergency psychological help. Probably we should have done it, but this is what we're having now. Dear friends, if you have any comments or questions, please get involved in our conversation. Anastasia Rakuta, Ukrinform, what software do you use for documenting the crimes, and how should our citizens properly do it? I mean, documenting the war crimes. Thank you. Well, in fact, from the very beginning of the war, I've seen a lot of initiatives in the area of documenting the crimes. There's a lot of websites, different applications that were trying to systematize everything that is happening, because every person after the beginning of the full-scale invasion, well, for everybody it was impossible to fall asleep, because you had to realize what in fact is going on, and the information that was reaching the people, it was extremely important. And if there was no information, it was very difficult for the people in the occupied territories, where they did not have any communication and no understanding of what was going on. And that was going on for weeks, and in some places for months. For example, for my family, my grandmother and grandfather, I was not aware whether they were alive for like 1 month. I was communicating for them for the first week, but then the Russians destroyed the cell towers, and I was only able to see them after 1 month. So we focused our efforts not in the social media, because it all sinks in that vast amount of information, and not only real information. And we understand that's an information war going on, and a major part of that information is even fake. So for us it was important not to have that information, some abstract information, but to have some specific people with their specific stories that you can not only read about, but see some symbol of what they survived. And this is the concentration of explanation of who Ukrainians are, what is our strength, what is our force. And in one way or another, it's a documentation of a war crime too. So this is how we were trying to document those stories and share them to the world. Because when a person on the other end of the world receives something from a place that they never heard about, and they've only seen that place in the news, like Irpin or AzovStal, well, no one ever heard about Irpin, but now the whole world knows about it. So we're just giving them the opportunity to touch them, because this is the recorded story in that cube. So how many stories were you able to collect? We collected 300 stories that we got documented in these cubes, but in fact there are more stories, but it would be physically impossible for us to do more. If we have any more questions, please go ahead.
Security media. What can Western journalists do to assist, or other volunteers that come into the country when they begin to go into areas that are obviously going to be filled with war fragments? What can they do to assist you? Also, I noticed that people sometimes will pick up items that they want to bring back to donors, which is not a bad idea because it helps essentially drive donations, but so that they can participate in the record, including, for instance, with me, I'm a photographer. How will those kinds of records assist your project? Thank you.
Ну, по-перше, для нас
Well, first of all, for us it's important to cooperate, to meet the people from all over the world. We already met some journalists from other countries, and what really can be of help to us is like spread the message, share this information about this project with others, because on our website we have about 5,000 to 6,000 daily visits. We understand that people read the stories, they get interested in them, and the main thing is to keep talking about this, not to forget it. We understand that we have to deliver those messages not through statistics, not through some abstract things, but through something specific, something that has weight. This is what's important for us, so we appreciate any information support of the project. We feel such support because whoever we contact, they understand instantly what is the project about, why it should be supported. So we are happy with our communication, with the contacts that we already have, and we are sure that the world will find out about this project. Dear friends, if we have any more questions, please.
Hiro Watanabe from Japanese newspaper Sankei Shimbun. Do you have any plan or ambition to exhibit these objects in public place, in particular in foreign country, some place in Europe? And how much do you expect these objects can give an impact on people who don't know real war? Thank you very much.
Так, ми спочатку.
Yes, first of all, we were not thinking about making some exhibitions of these cubes. We were thinking about only online museum, but when we started manufacturing them, we've realized that it's very important to make an exhibition. And yes, we plan to make an exhibition in Europe and in the United States and Canada, and we're looking for partners at the moment, because we understand that besides being the artifacts of war, they are the art objects through which we can communicate the stories of the people behind them. And we understand that even in Ukraine it's important to do this. Like Andrii mentioned, we are about to have an exhibition in Odessa in National Art Museum in April, but our further plans is to make some exhibitions abroad. Thank you very much for this conversation. Thank you for this great job you're doing, dear colleagues. I'm reminding you, joining us were Andrii Sirchenko, Tetiana Fiks, Olena Rozvadovska, and Myroslava Linska. And we continue working for our victory, and glory to Ukraine.